Hello and a very warm welcome to ET Studios in association with Exotel, coming to you from ET BFSI CXO Conclave. I'm your host Divina Lasan, and today we're going to deep dive into the fascinating topic of innovating seamless experiences for BFSI consumers in the age of Gen AI. Now, digital is not just a word but a whole ecosystem today. So, unlocking and unleashing the potential of digital to strengthen the businesses is the most integral question that CXOs face today. To help us understand how to deliver the most optimum consumer experiences and so much more, we have very esteemed guests joining us today. Rohit Kilam, CTO, HDFC Life. Welcome, Rohit.
Thank you very much.
And Angira Agrawal, India and SARC Head, Exotel. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here on ET Studios. It's such a pleasure to have you. And we're going to really deep dive into such an integral point. To kickstart, Rohit, maybe you can help us set the context to understand how BFSI consumers are really working to help engage with customers, working to really work with all the touch points to help to make companies more aware of consumer preferences.
Uh, Consumer preferences have seen a drastic change
Yes.
post COVID. More and more, we are seeing digital native expectations from BFSI as we move forward. We are looking at customers who would expect the same experience as they would experience looking at Swiggy or an Amazon or any other similar platform that they would go to. And the customer servicing, the customer onboarding, all the experiences have to be very similar.
Yes.
They obviously mark out if it is not, and we try and recalibrate our systems, process, and expectations according
Absolutely.
from a customer standpoint based on this.
Yeah, sounds like a lot of challenges actually to ensure that your messaging is really uniform across the board. How can BFSI companies look at this and ensure that there's coherence with all the communication that goes out there?
So we are starting to build communication engines.
Okay.
There are obviously communication engines which standardize our messaging across.
Okay.
First of all, there are two parts to it. One is obviously ensuring that you have a unified communication platform with which you, first of all, have a supply side and a demand side. Right?
Sure.
So, from a supply side standpoint, you have standard templates. The templates are approved. It goes through a set of production in so-called quotes. It is kind of a production readiness before it actually goes out to the customer.
Right. Okay.
So the entire platform has to work end to end, and then it needs to be enabled across all channels to the customer. It could be all the channels, like social medias, your messaging systems, your phones, any form and manner that the customer is comfortable to has to be applied when it goes to the customer. So supply and demand side from a communication standpoint.
Absolutely wonderful. Angira, let's get you in on this. Of course, you have a very interesting vantage point because you work with companies across the board, across industries. So, how are you seeing BFSI sector really gearing up to understand consumer preferences? And of course, no conversation on this can be had without talking about Gen AI. Right? So, what are some of the interesting solutions, especially Gen AI focused, that you're offering?
One of the things that Rohit touched upon is very interesting. The generation today is an instantaneous generation.
Absolutely.
They want
Absolutely.
everything insta,
Yes.
right? And for them, does it take me half an hour to get an insurance policy, or does it take me 5 minutes to get an insurance policy? No one's going to wait. And that's something that everyone is used to. And we've started to see that change dramatically in the way BFSI is now approaching service delivery for
Sure.
consumers. They are working extremely hard about the legacy systems that exist. You were speaking
Yes.
about it a short while ago, Rohit, in terms of how can they really work in a manner that is based on the convenience that the consumer wants. Its convenience is not only the way they are able to engage, but convenience is in terms of which channel do they choose to engage
Yes.
with the service provider. At any point of time, I may choose to interact in a completely random in a completely random manner from what was expected. So how does the organization build that? And we've seen a lot of organizations across use Gen AI to pick up data from data lakes. It's a lot easier now.
Yeah.
But it's also about how do you use that not only in the engagement with the consumer, but also give a holistic view to the human who's going to be interacting with the consumer.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's to enable both the consumer, but also to enable both the human who's going to interact with the consumer and fundamentally be the brand of the organization.
Absolutely. So, gentlemen, to both of you, I mean, surely hyper personalized experiences is at the heart of understanding your consumer and catering to them in the way that they require. So, Rohit, I mean, how does data really impact this, right? We're living in an era where data is king, data is the new oil. How does data help you understand the consumer to the level where you can really hyper personalize the
So there are two
experiences?
aspects of data specifically, right? One aspect is convenience, giving customer the context, convenience, and immediate wow factor with respect to understanding him, his needs, and catering to it. The other aspect is compliance,
Sure.
privacy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And how do you safeguard your customer from misusing his data,
Absolutely.
data getting misused?
Yes,
There are two
yes,
aspects,
yes.
and both of them are extremely important.
Yes.
I think the frameworks that we're building as part of the digital public infrastructure help us, and they're still in the evolution process, but they help us do this. We have to have consented data to ensure that there's compliance and privacy, and consent for a specific purpose, for a specific product, for a specific time frame. It's just not just
Absolutely.
blanket consent.
Yes.
From a convenience standpoint, it's extremely important to build better algorithms on the data sets that we have about customers. There are multiple technologies. There are AI, there's machine learning, there is obviously Gen AI, which is also building onto from here onwards. We are very close to almost creating personas, data personas of our customers.
Sure. Yes.
With the models that we have, with the data that we have. So if we have a data persona of a customer, I can better design products. That's data-driven product building.
Absolutely.
That is the future that we are moving to very soon.
Fantastic.
If not now.
Fantastic. Any specific examples that you'd be able to share?
So when I talk about a data-driven persona, I want to define a customer with respect to alpha, right? And an alpha generation.
Sure.
And how would he react if I know 5 data points about
Yes.
him?
Yes.
If I know his usage patterns, if I know his behavior patterns, I would define that using similar data points, what would be his preference from a savings product standpoint, or from when would his cash flow need be to lend something to him, or what is his protection need?
Yes.
To identify his protection need.
Yes.
So that's how you would build the data personas and marry them with the products that you're going to.
Okay.
So data-driven product development would happen like that.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. Angira, so again, how are you empowering and helping organizations to achieve such targets, such goals?
So it's very interesting. Often customer experience, and speaking to multiple organizations across industry verticals, we have seen customer experience is often used synonymously with customer service.
Yes, true.
However, that's not really true. In our experience, talking to multiple organizations, we have realized that customer experience actually starts from the point of time an individual, he or she, gets to first know about the service that can be
Yes.
provided by an
Sure.
organization. And that's when the data journey actually starts. I'm sure Rohit and his team are working on that, where it's about awareness that is created and the response that is generated at the acquisition time. How is the customer onboarded? And then how is the customer managed during the entire duration of the
Yeah.
relationship? There's a lot of data that comes in, right? How did I speak or engage with a service provider? Did I visit a branch? Did I need to visit a branch in the first place? Of course, but if I did, what was the quality of conversation that happened? How does all that information come together? So the next time when the customer is engaging with the service provider or the brand, he or she gets a much better experience because the previous interactions have all come together to provide a much better view.
Okay.
And that's what we are starting to see a lot of organizations use Gen AI data for. It's also linked to the point that Rohit brought up. A, of course, you need clear consent. There can be absolutely no violation on regulatory compliance. But B, you also need to know which data you can use and when. Because too much data can also be confusing.
Absolutely.
Right? You may end up over-engineering it. So we work with a lot of organizations to actually look at, hey, does this make sense? Does this not make sense?
Yeah.
And then say, let's stitch the journey together. So fundamental goal is to deliver a much better experience to the consumer who comes and interacts with you, as a result of which he or she want to buy more and more products from you.
Sure.
And that's why we're using a lot of Gen AI to build that information and provide that information to the interactions with the customers.
But ultimately at the end of the day, what any customer will also look at, what any company will look at is the ROI.
Right.
So how do you help them also figure out the ROI? What are the metrics that you have behind the
Correct.
scenes?
In fact, ROI is becoming an even tougher question now with
Yes.
the regulatory guidelines around
Absolutely.
140, 160, etc. coming into play. I think it's extremely critical to ensure or raise the bar on the quality of conversations or interactions that happen.
Okay. Yeah.
The interactions need to become even more intelligent, even more focused on the customer, right? And as they say, words is one part, but the tone and the body language play a more critical piece. So first of all, is the digital piece. Digital, of course, improves ROI dramatically because all said and done, a human interacting with a customer is always going to be a little more expensive than what digital would do.
Yes.
But in addition, what we are also looking at is how do we empower that human to be even more effective? So instead of taking, let's say, 4 minutes to finish off a conversation, without trying to hurry it up, can the agent, he or she, do a better job and make it 3 minutes?
Sure. Okay.
That's a 40% improvement in what they were already doing. That helps improve the ROI. And it's what we have also realized that it's not only providing the data to managers and management, it's also about empowering that individual to do a much better job, right? So how do you ensure that the individual understands how he or she could do a better job in terms of interacting and ensuring that the customer experience remains paramount all through the journey?
Absolutely.
So those are tech that we bring in to completely raise the bar on the quality of conversations that happen.
Yes. And yet the human touch is, of course, at the
Critical.
center of all of it. So, Rohit, how would you approach assessing the ROI on any new tool, any new innovation that you apply in the company when it comes to CX?
So when we look at ROI, we look at first phase of that is experimentation, and experimentation is extremely important. When we do a lot of experiments to figure out what's working, what's not working.
Sure.
In the experimentation phase, we define the parameters. These are the 3 critical or 4 critical parameters which should drive my ROI.
Okay.
And then we look at ROI not from immediate recency standpoint, but complete TCO standpoint. And when we look at TCO, we look at the build cost, we look at the run cost, 2 parts of it. From the benefit side of it, when we look at a business case, we are looking at either efficiency benefits or we are looking hard revenue benefits. Efficiency benefits can be either in terms of time or in terms of FTEs, that is full-time equivalents. That means the amount of people you would save on the process to run the process. So TAT, as well as FTEs. Those are the efficiency parameters. And revenues are direct revenue parameters, right?
Absolutely.
You look at what have you driven with that. If you're launching a new product, what have you, what is the upside from a revenue standpoint, direct part of it. That's how we look at it.
Okay, wonderful. Wonderful. Gentlemen, thank you so much for these very candid and in-depth insights. So before we wrap up, just sort of one key takeaway for all our viewers today when it comes to something they should keep in mind to create a seamless customer experience in the BFSI sector. One key takeaway. Rohit, let's start with you.
There's so much of Gen AI, I think we have to keep it human.
Yes.
That's extremely important. I've been on multiple apps where I feel I'm just talking to some server sitting on the other side. We have to keep it human.
Yes.
That's very important.
Wonderful. Angira?
In fact, the previous question, the ROI becomes extremely critical. There's often pressure to be a me too, FOMO. Please implement Gen AI. My view is that keep it human, but also factor in, does this really make sense for the customers I work with, for the businesses that I'm driving? Otherwise, just implementing it to get someone off your back may not necessarily be the right thing to do.
Sure, absolutely.
And you may ultimately struggle and it may just remain an experiment.
Sure, wonderful. Gentlemen, thank you so much for all your insights. It's been a pleasure to have you on ET Studios.
Thank you
very
so
much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rohit. Thank you.
All right, with great learnings from industry leaders on innovating seamless experiences for the BFSI consumers in the age of AI, that's all we have for you on this episode. But do stay tuned to ET Studios for many more in depth conversations. Until next time, many thanks for watching.